Okay, then. I'm Corey.
And this is Woody.
And I'm Jacob.
And this is the ISOcast.
Yeah, we just
kind of jump in like this.
we just jump in and we do the catch up and on the fly
Yeah.
Well, hello.
with the fight dirties.
The Fight Dirties.
Are you a singular dirty fighter? What is the singular form of your band name? Like, I am a fight dirty?
I guess it would be. It was inspired by, and I don't know whether this ever turned out to be a real story or a fictitious story, but there was this story running around about a cruise ship food fight brawl that was between a bunch of UK and US nationals, apparently instigated by somebody in a full clown suit. And that was the impetus for the band. So,
What a food fight, and actually like a for fun food fight, or an angry you took my all inclusive buffet away food fight?
no, like an all-out fist fight that happened to involve a lot of food because it was on a cruise ship. So there, it's a fist fight in a buffet, and so if you got one of those big Alaskan king crab claws, you're going to use
I
it.
bet you
I
are.
was gonna say, what's your go-to food that you're gonna grab in a food fight? What can do the most damage?
Apple.
Apple?
I kind of like the crab. I mean, that's spiky, hard. I mean, you could do some damage with it.
I'm going to go apple because there'll be the explosive quality when it impacts the head,
Mhm.
and then just the blinding acid in the eyes.
Mhm.
And then from there, you can just keep pummeling them with apples until they drop.
It's got the right acidity too. It stings,
Mhm.
Yep.
One
What
hand.
was that
It's
fruit?
baseball sized, I can just wing that.
Watermelon's too big.
Yeah. What was that fruit down in Costa Rica that it smelled just terrible? You know what I'm talking about? It was like that really big.
Like a pehi baye?
Oh,
No, it was not the pehi.
I would be upset if I were pummeled by paybays.
They
that
do
would be
smell
bad.
terrible.
No, it was like the size of a.
It's like a jackfruit. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't think I ever heard it called that. I can't remember what I heard it called. It was like the size of a pineapple, but it was like very soft, and it had
Wow.
like this white milky kind of inside.
Oh yeah, and it was green and kind of spiky on the outside, right?
Yeah, that one.
And they use it to cure cancer,
Yeah, stuff like that.
stuff like that.
I think
Oh,
that
that's
would be
called.
a great food fight brawl item.
Sounds like a good one. And thus the fight dirties were born. Is that the story?
And the beauty is you're struck by a fruit loaded with antibodies, which will help in the healing process. You're really doing someone a favor.
That's right. It does have one of my favorite lyrics of any of the numerous two bands that I've been in that we've ever penned, which is "Every clown's a sin." It's just wonderful.
Because I imagine that food fight started at the dessert table, right? With that clown grabs a cream pie and does the old cliche, hucks it at somebody.
They always do.
Or the bar.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Have you ever thrown or had a drink thrown in your face?
No. No, I haven't.
I don't.
Is that a thing?
think
Is that just
so.
a TV movie thing?
Yeah, because you think of that as like the typical horrible breakup thing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Do people do that? Have you ever seen it happen? Have you been in the vicinity?
Only on screen.
No.
There's a good challenge if we ever get to go to bars and see people again. Is try and get a drink thrown in your face.
I'd like to experience it once. I think it'd be what kind of drink now? If you're gonna be the thrower, and at least in Canada, drinks are very expensive. So you're gonna throw a $10 drink in someone's face. I mean, I don't think the movies account for the financial aspect of throwing a drink in someone's face.
That's probably part of the shame of it, right? It's like hey, I'm willing to suffer extreme personal costs to drench you in this appletini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't want ice. You don't want an umbrella. You don't want any like fruit swords. That's for sure.
Right.
No.
Have either of you been pied in the face?
No.
No,
I have had that experience from a fundraiser in college.
unless that's like a euphemism. I don't know what the young people are saying these days.
Is that a
Pied.
Tinder thing? I don't know.
No, like they do it at the end of baseball games. Like the guys will come up and they'll do the shaved cream pie in the face.
Yeah. It never happened to me.
Or they dump the water cooler over your head. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be a good office gag, actually. You know,
Would be. So yeah, I've been listening to the show, but I mean, how are you guys like the last? It's been a couple weeks, right, since you've had one up, or have I just missed them?
No, we took a break.
it has.
Took a little break.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved.
You moved.
So that consumed a few weeks, and then life happened. And Woody, are you still in phase 2?
I don't know. It's hard to keep track. You know, they say this, they say that. It's. I mean, we make jokes within reason. Like it's not like this is a science or anything, but this part of the province is this phase today, and the other part of the province is here, and this part of the city and that part. I don't really. I just stay home. I don't really pay attention to what I'm allowed to do. I have a deck. I have a little patio. I just sit out there and have my beer, and I don't really feel like I need to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at now?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, so close to the middle. I guess we're probably a little north of dead center of the middle. But we are one of the states that I think enjoyed, had some natural advantages on sort of slower spread, just because we have a little bit lower population density and more kind of things happening outside and some of those sort of things. But the last couple of weeks, things have been ramping up quite a bit here. So we'll see where it goes. There's schools seem to be sort of a barometer for, like how communities are doing right now. So our communities are still in the, they want to try to do a rotating schedule. So they're going to like send half the kids Monday, Wednesday, the other half Thursday, Friday, and then alternate Friday or something like that. So we're sort of in the, we're taking measures, but we're definitely not like completely locked down. Where I actually went to church for the first time this morning since this whole thing started. I'm coaching my son's t-ball team, the 3 and 4 year old t-ball team, which is hilarious. It's even funnier like with the COVID stuff because the parents are even more spread out, so they yell even louder.
It's megaphones.
It's so fun. It's just a blast. But
cool.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think we're kind of in the middle. We have taken it seriously from the beginning, but haven't had to deal with like a really scary situation yet. So
okay, that's good. That's good. That's interesting about the school setup, because I was thinking, not to toot my own horn here, but that's what we're here for. About, because at least in Toronto, they don't know anything. They haven't decided anything. They don't really know what to do with schools, in basically a month from now. And in my mind, why? Because there's this balance of, is it safe enough to send kids to school versus if you keep them home and, you have working parents, obviously, and daycare is expensive and these types of variables. So is there a rotation option that would be feasible for all parties considered? And, a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday rotation within every other Friday or an online Friday or whatever type of thing crossed my mind. I don't know if it's feasible here, but that's interesting that in Omaha that they're considering that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a lot of those working parents are not thrilled because they were kind of banking on, kids going back.
Right.
But if it all depends on what you think sort of the alternative is, right? Like if you think things are sort of overblown and it could be safe and we're doing this because we're being cautious, those folks are all upset. If you think, the alternative is basically nothing, you're happy to get them out of the house for, 2 days, 2.5 days out of the week. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I'm personally kind of nervous about the fall much more than I am sort of nervous right now. Because I think, especially again, in a kind of more spread out, community like ours, we can kind of deal with it, as long as we still have warm weather outside. I think when it gets bad here, it's going to be pretty tough. I think things are going to kind of go back to the way they were in March or April, and that's going to be tough for a few people to go back to.
We see some of my friends and colleagues in Ontario, Woody, now that you mention it, they got like, surveys and emails. What do you think we should do?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
that's so
I appreciate the notion that they are given the opportunity to feel like they're involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
But the reality is you can click anything on that survey and it's not going to make any difference in terms of how they decide to execute a return to school. But we, early on, we saw here in Quebec, there was considerable concern for those children, especially who depend on school for one or two of their best meals of the day.
Right.
For those that need to get out of complicated family situations. There's, of course, the social aspect of being, young and isolated from your group and community. So plus there's the folks that may or may not want to kill their kids after so many weeks of having spent time with them. Right. So it's multifactorial. I'd love to say, gosh, obviously the science is going to dictate what happens here, but there's got to be more of the social economic.
I think this is the last
as well.
Not maybe not the last, but maybe the last big element to be sorted. Because I was saying to someone yesterday, I think it was that it's weird that this new thing is normal now, where you just wear a mask when you go shopping and you try not to go around. And I think as a species, we now know kind of how to handle this, and that these new things are just necessary for the temporary, indefinite time that we're living. But schools are different, and Corey, we've talked on other episodes about just kind of cool things that are coming out of this. And I said before we started recording that my prescriptions now, my pharmacy is delivering to my house, which is pretty cool. But I've seen on the news in Europe and Denmark, I think, where they're building outdoor schools type of things, so outdoor classrooms, outdoor spaces. And obviously there are, where the three of us living, there's climatic elements where that wouldn't be feasible all year round, but there might, being outdoors seems to be a good thing. So maybe there's something there too.
Drive-in schools.
Yeah.
The kids and the parents all stay in the car. They hang the little speaker on the window. Teachers up on the big screen.
That was one of the funnier things. So we've been, doing lots of Zoom calls for work like everybody else has. I live near kind of one of the dammed up, parts of a stream over here. It's like a retention pond, but it's a very big one and it has nice bike trails and stuff. But the first couple of weeks after we got locked down, people were mostly in their houses. But then there was a point, I think it was maybe week 3, week 4, where I started noticing lots of my colleagues were sitting out in their cars by themselves. And then I started to realize they were all sitting in the same parking lot, which is right over at the lake. So, we've replaced our indoor office with our, we still have a hallway. It's a little more hard to, go through the door. But yeah, people are getting creative. I finally moved out. I was down here for 4 months, I guess, or something. And I finally was like, if I don't see the sun, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah, it's summer, right? I think now it's a little bit easier and it's nice outside if you have a space to go for a walk and stuff. When winter comes, we've said this before too. I don't know. Being inside is going to be harder when it's colder, but for now, and kids are off school, it feels normal because it's summer anyway. So we'll see what happens in the fall.
I think the one silver lining that will continue into that phase, we've just been living outside. We didn't own bikes at the beginning of this. We now are on them every other day. We, like those types of things. But I think one of those silver lining things is people, because so many of us are remote, working and potentially also learning that way, like with kids and stuff. There's more and more opportunity to sort of travel in the long term, like actually sit somewhere and experience a place kind of way, if you happen to have family who have places where you can go be with them for a while. So we did that for a couple of weeks up at a lake up in Wisconsin, and where Heather's folks have a place, and it was just wonderful. I mean, my work day was no different, but the kids had this beautiful sort of Northwoods playground to go run around on, and grandma trying desperately to chase after 3 grandkids under 3. But there are some things like that I think when the outdoor stuff goes away, there's going to be even more of that kind of pressure. I think it's a boon for grandparents if they can tolerate the risk of being around their younger, kids and grandkids. I think they're going to get to see more of them.
We're inherently, by the nature of the 3 of us sitting around on a Sunday afternoon podcasting, that by definition, I think, thrusts us into this position where we're fortunate enough, right, that all of our positions were not dramatically affected, and we're seeing silver lining. There's a lot of folks out there, obviously, who there is no silver lining. There's no work to go to. There's no Zoom they can call into. There's no grandparents to take the kids for half a day, so it's we're certainly aware and grateful sitting in our bubble of how this has worked out for some, but not for the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that true in Nebraska, Jake? The U.S. gets a lot of press, obviously, with what's going on, but the U.S. is a big country. So is Nebraska? How's life in Nebraska been since, let's say, April, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the sort of high points on, related to sort of the pandemic would be when it really kind of hit in Nebraska was when it started getting to some of the meatpacking plants and those sort of food service industry communities. So
Omaha Steaks.
Omaha Steaks, there you go. So yeah, like there's a large set of meatpacking facilities out near Grand Island, Nebraska, which is kind of right out in the middle of the state. And I haven't checked recently, but at the height of when New York was really bad, Grand Island was worse per capita.
Oh.
I mean, it's been, so there are isolated communities like that have really been hit hard. But, I am not accepting the premise that the reason it seems like we have so many cases is because we're testing so much. But it is true that in the early phases, the communities where we noticed it, I think it was in large part related to, because like a situation like that, you get in and you all of a sudden have to test everybody because they're handling food.
Right.
And so I think that's what's made it so hard to sort of wrap our minds around is like, nobody feels any certainty about sort of where we're at on whether even in the same community, sort of relative to where you were a month ago. I mean, like Heather and I have both been tested now because we both had spells where we were sick, and we were both negative. But in both cases, I think it was 7 or 8 days after we like filled out the screening that we actually got in to take a test, and then it was another, I think 3 days after that. So, I mean, even in the most immediate sort of personal sense, I don't really have a lot of faith in that result, that I didn't have it because,
the test says you didn't have it 11 days ago, but in those 11 days, yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. I think that's really been part of the problem, and there's a legitimate. I mean, trying to do anything that sort of granular and consistent at a national level and just a place this big it's hard. Like I'm not trying to make it sound like it should have been easy, but I think it hasn't been done well. I think we gotta basically be able to agree on that, and you can lay the blame where you want to lay the blame, but I think there's a strong appetite for it to be a lot better than that if we do have a second wave here when it gets cold. And I think that's driving a lot of the previously well-established sort of political and ideological and social sort of clusters around here. I mean, this is one of the reddest of the red places, in terms of party-wise and politically. But even here, there's just a lot. You can just feel kind of winds changing a little bit. The whole community kind of feels a little bit less settled. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a really interesting year to ride out here. I think I'm optimistic that March, April, May of next year, maybe we have a vaccine. The weather starts coming back. Those kind of things happen. I think we got a decent shot at a fairly normal next year, but it's going to be a while to get there.
Ride it out. Yeah, ride it out is a good phrase, I think, because it's human nature, especially in this modern age, to be impatient or to want things immediately. And I think that's the most frustrating thing, is that we all are realizing or have realized this is not going to be. So just got to sit tight and, as you say, ride it out.
Yeah,
or, fatigue. There's a point where you frankly just kind of get sick of the whole thing. We're seeing here in Canada a lot of spread amongst the youth. And it's largely being attributed to fatigue. We're kind of sick of this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, we miss our friends. We miss our social circles. We want to do stuff. And it's very hard to stay vigilant, you know, especially for those that their social circles are such an enormous part of their lives. You know, for me, I can say it like a lot of introverts. It's like, I'll be fine. You know, I don't love it, but I'll be okay. Yeah, I'm sad that some of my favorite places are never going to open again, and I'm not going to see some of the people I love probably for a year, but I'll be okay. But, you know, when you're young, when you're 15, 16, your social circle's everything. It's everything. And when you're like maybe 5, 6, 7, and you're living with mom and dad, there's only so much mom and dad you can take, right?
Yeah.
You gotta hang out with other kids.
Yeah.
So I think that's driving a lot of this.
And Corey, you're in a position that most people are in, and your family lives, your parents live not close to where you live geographically, and my partner's family similarly. Her sister and family lives in Niagara, which is 2 hours away, and her dad lives in London, and etc. And most families are like this, so that adds a strain as well. And Jake, I don't know if your family is close by, but lots of people don't, you know, have that 2-hour drive or plus, and that's a tricky, you know, do I do it? Do I not do it? When can I do it? And there's not really a good answer to that question.
Yeah. My side is about an hour and a half away from here for the most part. I have one brother who's up in Rochester, Minnesota, but everybody else is within that radius. And then Heather's side, they live up in Minneapolis, but they've been spending a lot of time up in Wisconsin, which is all of 12 hours from here, maybe 11. So when we've seen them, it's been kind of those longer spurts, and we have been able to do that a couple of times, but it's not like you can, you know, make a trip like that for a weekend very easily. My folks, we did have a period where we were separated for a while, in part because my dad is in a medical practice, and when this thing started, Omaha was much harder hit than Lincoln. And so among him and his partners, they were all like, nobody's going to Omaha, nobody's contacting anybody from Omaha. And we actually that was what caused us to pull our kids out of daycare, was that we were relying on my mom to watch the kids like one day a week. And she's like, I can't keep coming if they're going into daycare. So we had a period where that was really hard, but then since then we've kind of been they've kind of been a part of our, I think you guys talked about like bubbles of bubbles one time, or you had this Canadian idea of like
the double bubble,
pairing up your bubbles a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
the bubble boy. I keep thinking of that Seinfeld episode when you hear the bubble. Yeah, the bubble boy.
So my immediate family has kind of been our double bubble or whatever for probably the last couple months.
And keeping track of who's in the bubble, who's not in the bubble, it's a mathematical exercise. Well, I saw this person 2 weeks ago, so are they out? Do I now have room in my bubble for another person? Can you remove, once you're in the bubble, can you go out of the bubble? And all of these types of things we think, or at least I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Are you guys starting to get the notices of all of the places that you once patronized or not going to be there anymore? I'm getting a few of those myself.
No, I haven't yet, but to be honest, I haven't been paying a high degree of attention. I mean, I think like a lot of other people, I was hyper focused on it for a while, and then you just got to a point where it was like, is this something I can affect or control? Nope. So I guess I'll just focus on the things I can, you know, like, can I worry about whether we're ever going to go back to our awesome office downtown? Like, I could. But is that going to make my life better than just focusing on trying to do it as well as I can here? No, like, it's just not. So I've kind of put up the mental block on that, you know, for a while now, and probably more than I should have. But so if I have favorite bars and restaurants that have closed, I wouldn't even really know, because we've been basically living at the only two establishments we frequent are Costco and the liquor store. So.
In that order, or the opposite?
Well, I bought so much at the liquor store, I haven't had to go for a while. So.
I think Costco, U.S. Costco, can you buy liquor in bulk at Costco? Do they do that? Do they do 40 bottles of 40s?
Oh yeah, you have, and there's a few of them that are actually decent. There's some of them that are really bad.
Okay.
Like they're, the Kirkland brand. Um, like if you want to make Moscow mules,
Mm.
the Kirkland vodka is the best bang for the buck out there. But
Really?
yeah, it's very very good. It's a French. It's really good.
Good to know.
But I've got a little liquor store out close to me that's sort of one of those nice. It's not very big. It's kind of on the edge of a big city, so it's got the good, distributors that still service it, but it's not super expensive like the ones that are kind of downtown. So I like going in there and trying to help keep them afloat. But to be honest, I don't think they've been struggling.
The liquor business is booming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In Quebec, we're on a province-wide mask mandate now. I know in the GTA and Toronto area that you guys are, but
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's all of Ontario yet. But what's the deal in Nebraska? Are you guys masked or unmasked?
So Omaha does not have one at the city level yet because our mayor, for legal reasons, has said that would have to come from the governor, the way she's read it. The Lincoln mayor is currently in a fight with the governor about that because our governor is... I don't want to get in trouble. Our governor has decided that he wants to mirror our national policy, which is to say nothing. And for example, he, I think 2 months ago or so, maybe a month ago, declared that he was going to withhold any discretionary funding that he could from local governments if they required masks for people that came into their government offices. So I am not aligned with that particular stance. The Lincoln mayor, because things were getting bad here recently, tried to put in an order that basically required masks for most people, and that, who knows how effective that will be. I tend to think not very, because the problem with those mask mandates is the same everywhere, which is if you have people who buy into it and you turn it into, not wearing a mask is sort of like smoking, it's not hard to enforce because then everybody feels the social responsibility of, I'm wearing this to protect you. We're not there yet at a population level here. I mean, it's still very much if I feel uncomfortable, I will wear a mask. And that just doesn't lead to the level of adoption that you need for it to be an effective control. And it also makes a mask mandate really hard to enforce, because what are you going to do? Start arresting people for something like that? I mean, it's just logistically challenging of like, how do you get from here to there? Like I wore a mask in church this morning, which was very weird. Just because you're singing and it's a very proximal community, like, and we're socially distanced, like physical, spacing wise, and very few other people in my church were wearing masks. And I'm like the least at risk of anybody there from a population perspective. But I wanted to try to fight that a little bit. Like I just wanted, like, if anybody was feeling shamed out of wearing a mask, I wanted it to feel like maybe it was more okay because this young guy who probably doesn't need to be wearing one for his own sake is wearing one. But I think we're starting to turn the corner on that. We've got, like, again, our church is actually going to do a mask mandatory service next week, and then one not after it. So I think if it's going to happen here, just because of our weird cultural sort of relationship to government, it's going to be a social change thing, not a mandate thing. Like if it's really going to be effective, because if it gets pushed down, it's just going to be resisted. But if we start viewing it as us taking care of each other, I am optimistic we could actually get there and we could actually make a big difference.
Helpful to have buy-in from the private sector as well.
Mm-hmm.
When
very
organizations say, hey, you want to come into our establishment, we require you to wear one. But, it's super odd to me, because I think socially we've all accepted you can't walk into Costco without a shirt or shoes.
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden? Why is this such a big deal, for a year of our lives?
Change is always, it takes a while, right? People, when electricity wasn't invented, they didn't want it. They thought it was going to burn their house down. So things always take a little bit of time to to get instituted. I feel bad for, thinking of the private sector, I feel bad for the employees, because you hear stories and, the minimum wage workers in retail and fast food chains who get yelled at because they're asking politely, I assume, the patrons to put on a mask who aren't wearing one. And the topic of enforceability, Jake, is a good one. I mean, in Toronto, they're not really they're not arresting people. It's just they've got buy-in from the majority of people, and it's kind of shame each other type of thing socially. But if it's the minimum wage worker at McDonald's that has to enforce it, they didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
Having, though, considerable experience in retail, I can tell you that that's pretty much the norm. That whoever's on the front line of the customer complaint is the one who's the victim of whatever the company policy is. We've all gotten upset with, checking in on an airline or, that price on those beans was different on the counter, and it's like this kid, it didn't do that to you, but they're going to have to sit there and bear the brunt of it. So I'm certainly not suggesting that it's cool that they're the ones who are, getting screamed at because their store wants customers to wear a mask. But I don't know. Are we talking about outliers here? Because it always seems like when we watch things like, American media, that things seem to be a little bit, blown out of proportion. Here in Quebec, everywhere we go, everyone's wearing a mask, and it just is.
I envy you. It's just not, I mean, especially there's a funny sort of thing going around a couple weeks ago with this guy I know in Lincoln, who's a radio host now, but he was going through different establishments and trying to estimate mask wearing, like as you went. So it was the highest at, I think, hardware stores, and middle was like grocery stores. And then if you went into like a sporting goods store, it was like 5%. If that. And it's almost a like required to discretionary spending scale. like the more that you like have to be there, the more likely you were to be wearing it. The more you were just going to throw away some cash on something you didn't need, the less likely it is that you were going to be wearing it. And I think that kind of speaks to the cultural moment that we're in on this side. I mean, I'll tell you that the extremism, the sensationalism, that you see in terms of things being blown out of proportion is very real. I mean, it's not, I don't know what it looks like from there, but there are things that just inexplicably become political issues where the divide on like whether the left or right supports it or doesn't support it has no rational bearing to their like overall worldview or political ideology. It just doesn't, like with masks, for some reason that became a left pro-mask, right anti-mask thing. And if you just look at like what the two sides believe, it could have absolutely been the opposite. Like it doesn't, there's no good reason why it happened that way, other than the only one I can think of is that our CDC completely botched that at the beginning by telling people not to wear them because they were ineffective and to save them for the healthcare workers, and then trying to walk that back and being like, no, actually, we need everybody to wear it because it's a big public health benefit. And so I do think that probably seeded it, but that doesn't explain like why this is a political thing. There's so many things like that in our environment right now that just they don't make sense as political issues at all. But it's very real, and it's so unpredictable that you don't feel like you can, when we think about voting and trying to think about who we want to support and try to, fix it, you don't even know who to vote for because they're all crazy. It's like,
I was going to say, it's an election year. It doesn't feel like, at least from up here, it doesn't feel like it because we're used to, 18 months of gearing up for the election. And obviously, with good reason, this is overshadowing it. But just is there any talk about how voting could work in a, socially distanced voting type of system?
Well, our president, for the first president, at least in my lifetime, that I can ever remember hearing this, although I guess it's his second time saying it, said that he's already questioning the legitimacy of the outcome because he thinks there's going to be such widespread mail ballot fraud because of this, which I think is very dangerous and irresponsible to be saying. But I think a lot of states are turning toward mail-in. One of the positive effects that came out of sort of the election stuff that happened this last time around was that we have an extremely decentralized voting system, even for the federal elections here. And folks kind of woke up to the fact that we were pretty vulnerable in a lot of ways on that to outside interference. And I think some of the effort that got put into trying to fix that system to guard against outside threats is actually going to be helpful here, because if you do switch to mail-in ballots, or you do switch to trying to do other things logistically at the voting sites, drive-through voting or whatever, to try to handle that, I think we've invested more in our ability to check the integrity of the voting process. So I'm hopeful that will help. I registered to do mail-in voting in our primaries this year, and I anticipate I will do that in November as well. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, we saw that with the primaries, whatever those were in March or April. And I think it's going to be tougher in November than it was then from a public health perspective. So we'll see where it goes. It is certainly making some strange bedfellows on the voting, spectrum of sort of people that are previously like get out to vote activists are now like not, and people that are like, it's just a very odd, it feels very odd and unpredictable.
Just do it all on Facebook. Send out a poll. Be done with it.
Poll in Estonia.
Twitter poll. That's something the president will get on board with. He likes Twitter, so.
That's true.
Sure.
That's true.
Okay, then. I'm Corey.
And this is Woody.
And I'm Jacob.
And this has been the ISOcast.